The space station called Karth's Reach floated at the edge of known space like a rusted coin forgotten in the dark. Its metal walls were patched with old plates from dozens of different ships, and its lights flickered as if even the station itself was tired of standing between law and chaos. Traders, smugglers, explorers, and soldiers all passed through its halls, each one carrying a different story and a different secret. Captain Elias Mercer stepped off his ship and pulled his jacket tighter around him. The air inside the station always felt cold, even when the temperature was set to normal. Maybe it was not the air, he thought. Maybe it was the place itself. Karth's Reach was known for deals that never showed up in official records. Elias had come for supplies. Fuel cells, food packs, and new navigation parts. Nothing more. He had promised himself that he would not get involved in anything else. He had learned the hard way that helping the wrong person in the wrong place could get you killed. As he walked through the wide central corridor, he passed by stalls filled with glowing alien crystals, mechanical pets, and strange foods sealed in clear containers. Voices in many languages mixed together into a low, constant noise. Somewhere far above, engines hummed and ships docked and undocked like slow, careful insects. Then he heard a different sound. It was not loud, it was not even clear at first, just a calm, steady voice coming from one of the side halls. Lot number 42. Non-sentient labor unit, strong, adaptable, low maintenance. Elias stopped walking. He turned his head and followed the sound. He did not want to, but his feet moved anyway. The hall opened into a large room shaped like a half-circle. Rows of seats faced a raised platform. On the platform stood a tall alien with dark gray skin and 4 thin arms holding a glowing tablet. Behind him, a line of figures stood in soft blue light. Elias felt his stomach tighten. It was an auction. He had heard about these. He had told himself they were just rumors, exaggerated stories meant to scare new travelers. But here it was, right in front of him. The figures behind the auctioneer were not machines. They were not animals. They were beings. Different shapes, different colors, different species. Some were tall and thin, others small and round. All of them wore simple metal collars around their necks or bodies. Starting bid at 500 credits, the auctioneer said. A hand went up in the crowd. 600. 7, 8. Elias stayed near the back, his arms crossed. He told himself to leave. This was not his business. This was how the galaxy worked, even if he did not like it. Then the blue light shifted, and one of the figures stepped forward. She was taller than most of the others, with skin that shimmered softly like moonlight on water. Thin lines of glowing patterns ran along her arms and face, changing color as she moved. Her eyes were large and dark, and they did not look empty or confused. They looked aware. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Lot number 43, bioluminescent labor class, origin world unknown, high endurance, fast learner. Elias leaned forward without realizing it. The alien woman did not look at the crowd. She looked at the floor. Her hands were held behind her back, not by chains, but by habit. The collar around her neck pulsed with a faint red light. Starting bid 1,000 credits. The room grew quieter. This one was clearly considered more valuable. A trader in the front row raised 2 fingers. 1,200. Another voice followed. 15. Elias felt something twist in his chest. He had seen fear before. He had seen anger, sadness, and pain, but what he saw on her face was something else. It was acceptance, not peace, not calm. It was the look of someone who had stopped hoping. Elias clenched his jaw. He thought about his ship, his plans, his quiet life of moving from one system to another. He thought about the times humans had been treated as weak, as small, as unimportant by the larger powers of the galaxy. He raised his hand. 2,000. The room murmured. The auctioneer's eyes widened slightly. 2,000 credits, do I hear more? The trader in front hesitated, then shook his head. Sold. The sound of the hammer hitting the metal block echoed through the room. Elias felt his heart pounding as a small drone floated toward him. A screen popped up, showing the transfer of credits. His account dropped to almost nothing. The alien woman was led toward him by another drone. When she stood in front of him, she was taller than he had expected. Up close, the glow of her skin was soft and warm, like a living light. She did not speak. Elias swallowed. You don't have to follow me." Her head tilted slightly, as if she did not understand the words. He pointed to the collar. "That thing, it controls you, right?" She nodded once. Elias took a small device from his pocket. It was a standard control key, usually given to owners. His hand shook as he pressed a button. The collar beeped. The red light turned green, then it went dark. The alien woman gasped. It was a sharp, sudden sound, like someone coming up for air after being underwater too long. She staggered back a step, her hands flying to her neck. Elias held up his hands. "You're free. I'm not your owner. I don't want to be." She stared at him. The glowing lines on her skin flickered wildly, changing from blue to gold to something like soft pink. "Free," she whispered. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Yes," Elias said, "free." Around them, people had started to notice. Whispers spread through the room. The auctioneer's face darkened. A loud alarm rang out. Red lights flashed along the walls. A mechanical voice filled the hall. "Unauthorized release of classified labor asset. Security response activated." Elias grabbed her hand without thinking. Her skin felt warm, almost like it carried its own gentle heat. "Run," he said. They ran. The corridors blurred past as they pushed through crowds. People shouted and jumped out of the way. Overhead, security drones dropped from hidden panels, their lights sweeping back and forth. Elias led them through narrow side halls, past storage rooms and maintenance doors. He knew the station well enough to avoid the main paths. "Who are you?" the alien woman asked as they ran. "My name is Elias," he said between breaths. "I have a ship. If we can reach it, we can get out of here." She nodded, trusting him without knowing why. They turned a corner and nearly ran into two security drones. Elias skidded to a stop and pulled her behind a stack of cargo crates. The drones hovered past, their sensors scanning the area. They stayed still, barely breathing. When the drones moved on, Elias let out a slow breath. He looked at her. "I didn't even ask your name." She hesitated. "Tikari," she said. "That is what my people called me before." Elias smiled slightly. "It's a good name." They reached the docking bay just as a warning siren began to rise in pitch. Elias' ship, a medium-sized exploration vessel called the Far Dawn, waited at the far end. He sprinted up the ramp and pulled Tikari inside. The doors closed behind them with a heavy thud. Elias rushed to the control panel and powered up the engines. The ship shook as it lifted off the platform. Outside, security ships moved into position. Tikari stood behind him, her hands clenched together. "They will not let us go," she said softly. Elias' fingers flew over the controls. "They don't have to." He pushed the ship into a sharp turn, diving toward the open space beyond the station's outer ring. A warning light flashed, but he ignored it. A beam of energy passed just behind them, close enough to light up the cockpit in bright blue. Tikari cried out and grabbed the back of his chair. Elias hit the jump drive. The stars stretched into long lines of light. Then everything went dark. When the ship settled into normal space, silence filled the cockpit except for the low hum of the engines. They were gone. Elias leaned back in his chair, breathing hard. He turned around and looked at Tikari. She was staring at the window, at the endless field of stars beyond. Her glowing patterns had slowed, turning into a steady, gentle light. "My people believed the stars were doors," she said. "We believed that if we ever reached them, we would find a better life on the other side." Elias stood up and joined her at the window. "Maybe you just did." She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "You did not have to help me," she said. "You lost everything you had." Elias shrugged. "I still have my ship, and now I have a passenger." Tikari's lips curved into something like a smile. "I do not know what to do with freedom." Elias thought for a moment. "Neither do most people. We figure it out as we go." Outside, the stars kept shining, quiet and endless, as the Far Dawn moved forward into the unknown. Somewhere behind them, laws and empires and old systems still stood strong. But something had changed. For the first time in a very long time, someone had said no. And the galaxy had heard it. The ship moved quietly through open space, its engines glowing soft white against the dark. Stars passed slowly outside the wide front window, like tiny lights floating on a deep ocean. Inside the cockpit, the air felt calm, but both of them knew that peace would not last long. Elias stood near the control panel, checking systems and scanning for any sign of pursuit. His ship, the Far Dawn, was fast, but it was not a war vessel. If the Galactic Authority wanted them badly enough, they would find them. Behind him, Tikari sat on one of the side seats. She held her hands in her lap, still unsure what to do with them when she was not being ordered. The glowing lines on her skin moved slowly now, changing between soft blue and pale green. She watched everything. Every sound the ship made, every button Elias pressed, every small movement in the cabin. "You are nervous," she said quietly. Elias glanced back at her and gave a small smile. Yeah, I guess I am. Is it because of me? Elias paused. He thought about the alarms, the drones, the energy beams. He thought about the look on the auctioneer's face when the collar shut down. Yes, he said honestly. But not in a bad way. She tilted her head. I do not understand. Elias walked over and sat in the chair across from her. Where I come from, freedom is a big deal. People have fought wars over it, lost planets over it. So when I saw you standing there like you didn't even believe things could be different, I couldn't walk away. Tikari looked down at her hands. My people once believed in freedom too, long ago, before the skies burned. Elias leaned forward. What happened? She took a slow breath. We were explorers. We built ships made of light and stone. We traveled to many stars, but we were not strong fighters. When the Empire found us, they said we would serve a better purpose as workers. They took our leaders. They erased our history. They taught our children that obedience was survival. Her glowing patterns dimmed slightly. They made us forget who we were. Elias felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. You remember. Only pieces, she said. Stories whispered in the dark. Songs that were never written down. The ship's alert system beeped. Elias jumped up and rushed back to the controls. A warning flashed across the screen. Incoming transmission, Galactic Authority, he cursed under his breath. They found us, Tikari asked, standing up. Not yet, Elias said, but they're close enough to talk. He stared at the screen for a moment, then pressed accept. The image of a tall, sharp-faced alien filled the display. Its skin was silver and smooth, and its eyes glowed a cold yellow. Behind it stood armored guards, still and silent. Captain Elias Mercer, the alien said, you are in possession of stolen property. Elias crossed his arms. She's not property. The alien's eyes narrowed. Galactic law says otherwise. Tikari stepped into view beside Elias. The alien's gaze shifted to her. You belong to the labor class, it said. Return with us and this human will face only minor punishment. Tikari felt something rise inside her. Fear, yes, but also something new, anger. I do not belong to anyone, she said. Her voice was steady, even though her glowing lines flashed bright gold. The alien studied her for a long moment. You have been corrupted, it said. Human influence is known to cause instability in lesser species. Elias laughed, sharp and short. Funny. From where I'm standing, you're the unstable one. The alien's expression hardened. This is your final warning. You will be tracked. You will be caught. The screen went dark. Silence filled the cockpit again. Tikari's hands were shaking. Elias noticed and gently placed a hand on her arm. You did good. She looked at him. They will never stop. No, Elias said. They won't. He turned back to the controls and pulled up a star map. Dozens of systems appeared on the screen, marked with different colors and symbols. There's a human station not far from here, he said. Free port, no authority control. If we can reach it, we might find help. Tikari leaned closer, studying the map. Your people protect others? Not always, Elias admitted. But some of us try. The far dawn jumped back into faster travel, stars stretching into bright lines again. When they arrived, the station was smaller than Karth's reach, but cleaner, brighter. Its lights glowed warm yellow instead of cold white. Human ships and alien vessels docked side by side without heavy security drones watching every move. Elias guided the ship into an open bay and powered down. As they stepped into the station, Tikari froze. People walked freely. Some laughed, some argued, some sat together, sharing food and stories. Different species, different shapes, different colors, all moving without chains, without collars. Tikari's breath caught in her throat. This is what the galaxy could be, she whispered. Elias watched her take it in, her glowing patterns shining brighter than he had ever seen. They walked through the main hall, and eyes began to turn toward them. Some recognized Elias from the transmission that had already started spreading across open channels. A human woman in a long coat approached them. Her hair was gray and her eyes were sharp. You're the one who caused all that trouble, she said. Elias sighed. I was hoping to avoid attention. She smiled slightly. Too late. My name is Mara Kells. I run communications here. Her gaze shifted to Tikari. And you must be the reason. Tikari straightened. I am Tikari. I am free. Mara nodded. I saw your message before the authority shut it down. You spoke well. Tikari blinked. You heard me. More people did than you think, Mara said. And they're asking questions now, about labor classes, about erased histories. Elias raised an eyebrow. That fast? Mara leaned closer. You didn't just free one person, you lit a signal fire. They led them into a quiet room filled with screens and glowing displays. News feeds from across the galaxy rolled past, showing debates, protests, and broadcasts from different systems. Tikari saw faces like hers on the screens, other enslaved beings watching, listening. Your voice gave them something they haven't had in a long time, Mara said. Hope, Tikari felt her chest tighten. I never wanted to be a symbol. Neither do most people who become one, Elias said softly. A young alien rushed into the room. Mara, authority ships just entered the outer system, Mara cursed. They move fast. Elias clenched his fists. Then we move faster. Tikari looked between them. If I leave, will they stop chasing you? Mara shook her head. No, not now. You're both part of this, whether you like it or not. Tikari thought about her people, about the stories whispered in the dark. About the stars as doors. I will not run anymore, she said. Elias met her eyes. You don't have to face this alone. Outside, the station's alert lights began to flash. Mara turned to her screens. We can't fight them, but we can show them. She opened a channel. Not just to one system, to all of them. Tikari stepped forward, her glowing patterns lighting up the room. My name is Tikari, she said into the camera. I was told I was born to serve, that I was less than those who own the sky. Her image spread across stars and worlds. But I remember who we were, and I see who we can be. Elias watched as messages started flooding in from other systems. Questions, support, stories. Outside, authority ships moved into position. Inside, something much bigger was forming, not an army, a movement. And it had just begun. The station trembled as the first shockwave passed through its outer ring. Lights flickered along the wide hallways, and the soft hum of power systems turned into a low, worried growl. People stopped walking. Conversations died in the air. Everyone knew what that sound meant. The Galactic Authority had arrived. Elias stood near the main viewing window with Mara and Tikari. Outside, long silver ships moved into place like cold, sharp blades in the dark. Their engines glowed with controlled energy, calm and powerful as if they already believed the battle was over. Mara folded her arms. They're not here to talk. Elias clenched his jaw. They never are. Tikari stepped closer to the glass. Her glowing patterns slowly shifted to a deep gold. My people used to say that when the sky grows quiet, it is because a storm is listening. Below them, small ships began to move. Civilian vessels, cargo haulers, old transports, and personal ships of every shape and size. They were not warships, they were not built for fighting, but they were moving anyway. Elias blinked. What are they doing? Mara checked her screens. They're forming a line between the station and the Authority fleet. Elias stared. They can't stop those ships. They'll be destroyed. Mara nodded slowly. They know. Tikari's breath caught in her throat. Why would they do this? Mara looked at her. Because of you? Outside, a small transport ship moved into place, its hull scratched and patched. A message flashed across open space in bright, clear light. No one is property. Then another ship joined it, and another, and another. Soon, a long, uneven line of ships stretched across the dark, fragile and brave. The Authority fleet paused. For the first time, they hesitated. Elias felt something tighten in his chest. They're standing up to an empire with delivery ships. Mara smiled softly. Sometimes that's how change starts. Inside the station, people gathered in the halls, watching the feeds. Some held hands. Some whispered prayers in languages older than star travel. Tikari turned away from the window. I did not ask for this. Elias met her eyes. You didn't ask to be a slave either. The station's main screen flickered to life. The silver-faced Authority commander appeared again. This is your final chance, it said, its voice echoing through the station. Step aside, return the asset, the blockade will be lifted. Mara stepped forward and activated a reply channel. Tikari moved before Elias could stop her. She stood in front of the camera, her glowing patterns bright and steady. My name is Tikari, she said, and I am not an asset, I am not a class, I am not a tool. Her image spread across open channels, carried by ships, stations, and private networks. I was born under a sky that once held dreams. My people built ships to touch the stars. We sang songs about what we would find beyond our world. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. They took our sky. They took our names. They taught us to bow our heads and forget. Behind her, Elias stood tall and silent. I remember now, Tikari said, and so do others. You cannot erase us again. The commander's eyes narrowed. You will be silenced. Before the feed could cut, something unexpected happened. Another screen opened, then another. Then dozens, Faces filled the air around them, different species, different worlds. Some wore collars, some bore marks of control implants. Some stood in hidden rooms whispering into stolen cameras. One voice spoke, then another, then many. I am not property. I am not a tool. I remember who we were. Elias felt chills run down his arms. Mara whispered, they're everywhere. Outside, the line of civilian ships grew longer. More jumped in from distant systems, drawn by the broadcast. The Authority fleet powered its weapons. The sky lit up with warning lights. Elias grabbed Tikari's arm. We need to get you out of here. If they fire, Tikari shook her head. If I run now, they win. Mara looked at her, then nodded. I have a better idea. She turned to her console and pulled up a hidden file. These are old records, she said. Buried in forgotten archives, wars the Authority doesn't want anyone to remember, worlds erased, species classified as non-sentient after they lost. She looked at Tikari. Your people are in here. They were explorers, engineers, leaders. Tikari's eyes widened. Mara hit a button. The files went public. Across the galaxy, screens filled with images of Tikari's people standing tall on shining cities, flying ships made of light and stone. Other species appeared too. Builders, thinkers, artists. All labeled later as labor class. The Authority commander shouted orders. Ships moved, weapons charged, but something else moved faster. The truth. Messages flooded in from systems that had once followed the Authority without question. Governments demanded answers. Merchants cut contracts. Patrol fleets hesitated. One of the Authority ships broke formation. Then another, then three more. Elias watched in disbelief. They're pulling back. Mara nodded. Empires don't fall from explosions. They fall when people stop believing in them. The commander's screen went dark. Outside, the fleet slowly turned away, their perfect lines breaking into scattered paths. A cheer rose inside the station. It started as a single voice, then many, until the halls shook with sound. Tikari felt her knees weaken. Elias caught her before she fell. You did this, he said. She shook her head, tears glowing on her skin like tiny stars. We did. Days passed. The station became a meeting place for ships carrying freed beings from dozens of systems. Human worlds opened their ports. Some alien worlds did too, quietly at first, then openly. Refuge fleets formed, moving through space like rivers of light. Tikari walked through the halls, no longer unnoticed. People bowed their heads, touched their chests, or simply smiled as she passed. She did not feel like a hero. She felt like someone who had been given a voice and could not stop using it. One evening, she stood with Elias in the docking bay, watching ships come and go. What will you do now? Elias asked. Tikari looked at the stars. My people have no home. Not anymore. Our world is a memory. Elias nodded. Then maybe it's time to build a new one. She looked at him. Will you help us? He smiled. I didn't free you just to walk away. A message came in on Mara's channel. The Galactic Council was calling for an emergency meeting. Laws were being questioned. Systems were threatening to leave the Authority's control. The galaxy was changing, not because of a great battle, but because someone had said no. Tikari closed her eyes and listened to the sound of ships, voices, and movement all around her. It sounded like life, like possibility. Somewhere deep inside, she heard the old songs of her people again. This time, they were not whispers in the dark. They were being sung across the stars. The meeting hall of the Galactic Council floated in open space, surrounded by a ring of silent stars. The structure was old, built long before most of the current empires had even named themselves. Its walls were made of crystal and metal, shaped to reflect both light and shadow, as if the builders had known that truth often lived between the two. Inside, representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the wide chamber. Some sat in high seats made of stone or metal. Others hovered in the air or rested in pools of liquid or stood on glowing platforms. Voices in many languages mixed into a low, restless sound. At the center of the hall, a large screen lit up. Tikari's image appeared. She stood on the deck of the Far Dawn, stars behind her, her glowing patterns soft and steady. Elias stood just out of frame, close enough to remind her that she was not alone. The room fell quiet. My name is Tikari, she said. Her voice carried across systems, carried by ships, stations, and hidden relays. I was born into chains I could not see. I was taught that the sky belonged to others and my place was beneath it. Some of the council members shifted in their seats. My people were not always servants, she continued. We were builders, we were explorers, we were dreamers. That truth was taken from us and we were taught to forget. Behind her, images began to play, old cities made of light and stone, starships shaped like flowing water. Children laughing under open skies. "These are not lies," Tikari said. "These are memories, records, proof." Elias watched the faces in the hall change. Some showed surprise, some showed anger, some showed shame. Tikari took a slow breath. "You built a system that turns living beings into tools. You called it order, you called it peace. But peace that is built on silence is not peace, it is fear." The screen faded. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a voice rose from the far side of the hall. "If we undo the labor class system, entire economies will fall." Another voice followed. "And if we don't, entire civilizations will rise against us." The chamber filled with argument. Outside the council hall, the galaxy waited. Across human space, ships stood ready, not for war, but for protection. Refuge worlds had formed, places where freed beings could land without fear of being taken again. Cities grew from empty ground, built by hands that had once been forced to work and now chose to. On one of those worlds, Tikari stood on a hill of soft blue grass. The sky above her was wide and clear, painted in colors she had never seen before. Around her, others like her worked, laughed, and argued about where to place the next building. It was not her home. But it was becoming one. Elias walked up beside her, carrying 2 cups of warm drink. He handed one to her. "They're still arguing," he said. She smiled slightly. "They always do." A small group of children ran past them, chasing a floating ball of light. Their laughter echoed across the open field. Tikari watched them, her glowing patterns brightening. "I used to think freedom was a door," she said, "something you step through and then it is done." Elias took a sip of his drink. "And now?" "And now I think it is a road," she said, "one you walk every day." A signal light blinked on Elias' wrist device. He looked down, then up at her. "They're ready to speak." They returned to the far dawn, which lifted smoothly into the sky and jumped across space to a relay station near the council hall. The screen in the cockpit came to life. The silver-faced commander appeared again. But this time, the sharp confidence in its eyes was gone. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision," it said. Tikari's heart beat fast. "The labor class system is hereby abolished," the commander continued. "All beings classified under it are to be recognized as full citizens of their respective species." Elias let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. Tikari closed her eyes, but the commander was not finished. "Systems that resist this ruling will face sanctions and isolation. Enforcement fleets will be deployed to protect those who choose freedom." The screen went dark. Silence filled the cockpit. Then Tikari laughed. It started as a soft sound, almost unsure, and then grew into something bright and full. Tears ran down her glowing skin, leaving trails of light. "They listened," she said. "They actually listened." Elias smiled. "Sometimes even the biggest walls crack." The days that followed felt like a dream. Chains were removed, collars were shut down, control systems were dismantled. Across the galaxy, beings stepped into lives they had never been allowed to imagine. Some returned to old worlds, now ruins, and began to rebuild. Others joined new communities, mixing cultures and stories in ways the old empires had never planned for. Tikari traveled from system to system, not as a symbol, but as a guide. She spoke to those who were afraid of what freedom meant. She listened to those who were angry about what had been taken from them. Elias stayed by her side, piloting the far dawn through stars that now felt different, lighter, as if space itself had taken a deep breath. One quiet evening, they stood on a cliff overlooking a growing city. Lights glowed below them, warm and alive. "Do you ever regret it?" Tikari asked. "Buying me, starting all of this?" Elias thought for a moment. "I regret not doing it sooner," she smiled. A message came in from a distant system. A group of her people had found an old archive world, hidden and forgotten. It held maps, songs, and stories from before the fall. They had a chance to rebuild their history. Tikari looked at the stars, her eyes shining. "I want to see it," Elias nodded. "Then let's go." The far dawn lifted off once more, moving into the endless dark filled with quiet light. Behind them, the galaxy was still far from perfect. There were still borders, still disagreements, still fear in some places. But something had changed. When the universe had tried to tell humanity and those they stood beside that this was just the way things were, they had answered with something simple. No. And that single word had become a promise that no one would be forgotten. A promise that no one would be owned. a promise written not in laws or fleets, but in the quiet, steady courage of people who chose to care. As the stars stretched into lines of light, Kari rested her hand against the window of the ship. For the first time in her life, she did not see the sky as something that belonged to others. She saw it as something that belonged to everyone,